Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Back with another live stream updating folks on the campaign, talking about more of the issues that we're facing, and trying to provide another opportunity for folks to ask questions. That is vitally important, I think, for a candidate to do, not just be available, not just have contact information out there, but also to put the effort in. And I've been doing that almost every week, whether it's door knocking, going out and trying to reach folks, hosting the events that I've been hosting in the parks that have been based around issues that people want to address. I had a general topic Q&A discussion this last weekend. I had a discussion on the historic buildings, which we'll talk a little bit more about tonight. And next I'm talking about housing and rental reform. That'll be October 8th, I believe. And more information can be found on the website below. That's samtemplecommissioner.com. Or you're watching this on Facebook, you can find that on Facebook as well. It's been really, really fulfilling to get to talk, not even as a candidate, just as a community member, about the challenges facing our community. And that's been true not just with this campaign. You can ask anyone that knows me or anyone that had the opportunity or circumstance to hear me talk about Faribault. That's one of my favorite things to discuss. Whether it's our history, the contemporary issues we face, or the opportunities for the future. Where Faribault could be in 5 years, where Faribault could be in 20, 50 years. What will I be able to see in my lifetime? Well, go back 50 years, go back 100 years. See how much change has taken place just in that amount of time. When you look at things from that perspective, if you're looking at an issue from today, just today, and you're saying, I want to see this change, but it's going to take 3 whole years. It's going to take 5, 10 whole years. When you look at it from the historical point of view, when you look at how much can change in a half a lifetime, that's pretty astounding. And not just on individual projects, whether it's a building or a business, but in a community, because nothing exists in a vacuum. The impact that one person or one project has is beyond the scope of likely what anyone really set out to do. Developing a project to benefit one area of Faribault is going to have an indelible impact on every other area of Faribault. That's why hyperlocal stuff is just, it's so darn compelling, because you get those tangible real-world results. You get that human-to-human connection, but it has such a big impact on the community. And I think the more intention we put out there, the more effort that we all put into our little corners of the world, that's how we make big change. And I've just been reminded of that interest, that passion, anytime I'm out in the community talking to people. And I hope that you'll come talk to me too. Whether it's hopping on with a comment in the live stream or to one of my upcoming events in the park. Those are really listening sessions. I want to hear from folks. And yes, people have questions and I want to answer, but more than that, I want to hear not only your perspective on the issues, but I want to hear what your experiences have been. What is your perception of Faribault? What is your relationship with your community? How has it been positively or negatively impacted by local government, by the county? What more do you feel could be done? Those are all vitally important, to have those conversations about the issues, because whether you realize it or not, these things are extremely impactful on your everyday lives. And if I ask you, what's your opinion on, rental licensing in Faribault? you might not have much of an opinion because you're like, oh, well, that's for the experts. But if I ask you, have you ever visited a friend or family member and you were concerned about where they were living? But a lot of people would respond differently to that. Or have you ever been in a dispute with someone? Have you ever had conflict that you struggled to resolve and none of you wanted, had the financial means to get it figured out? Or were you faced with an issue where you had food insecurity? Were you facing a time in your life when you didn't get a medical issue addressed because you couldn't afford doctor's bills or to take time off work? That is a lot more personal for folks, and those questions can be a lot more revealing than you ask them about, what's your opinion on Medicare? What's your opinion on local public health infrastructure? People might not have opinions when you phrase it like that. But when you really put in the effort to understand people on the human level, on the person-to-person level, that's what a community is, right? It's just a group of people. It's just a group of people with a bunch of those interpersonal connections. And so politics gets a bad rap, but I think locally, ideally, what elected leaders can do is they can be representative of those person-to-person connections. And ideally, that's what the effort is. That's what the goal is, that we elect people who at least strive to be representative of the entire community's person-to-person connections. And it would be a true honor to represent Faribault in that capacity. So I hope I get the opportunity to do it. You can never predict how these things will go, but I can't help but feel emboldened that I'm going about this the right way, that I've been putting in the work, and the work in itself is rewarding, but the positive feedback I've gotten, I think, also speaks loudly. So I want to talk a little bit about the work that I've been doing. I want to talk about the communications work that I've been doing, because it really, the job is to be a communicator not only on behalf of the people, but a communicator to the people. Commissioners and every elected representative, every elected official is the conduit for the community. They're representing those person-to-person relationships. So our job is not only to take all those conversations that we've had, here's the perspective, here's how John down the street is going to feel about this issue, or here's how this is going to impact Nina and the apartment that she lives in, or George, who lives right near this building. Here's how these different issues are going to affect that. But it's also taking complex macro issues and making them personal. So just like we talked about, right? Like if you ask someone what their opinion is on public health policy or rental reform, they might not understand that, but you got to put it in human terms. So it's also the job as elected officials to communicate those things in human terms, so that not only do people feel confident and assured in the decision that you're making, but they also feel emboldened that their government is doing things in their interest, to their benefit. Now that requires that you vote in favor of the people's interests and benefits. I intend to do that. But when you take the time to make people aware, when you put in the effort to make people aware, you might not see immediate dividends, but over time, those relationships get strengthened. And I've only been campaigning since late May, early June, and I've already felt those connections strengthening. I've already felt the trust being developed in people. And that has been extremely empowering. I've been doing that through writings on my website. Again, that's samtemplecommissioner.com. I've been doing that with live streams like this. I've been doing that with in-person events that I've been promoting heavily. That's where a lot, rather than buying 30,000 lawn signs, I've bought some lawn signs, but not 30,000 because there's only 13,000 people in my district. But I've also been purchasing ads in the newspaper. I wrote a letter to the editor, and I have also received support from folks in the letter to the editor. Tova Selner wrote one a really kind letter. I taught Sunday school at First English Lutheran Church with Tova, and so that was extremely kind of her to write, and that really is big. Again, demonstrating those person-to-person connections. So more so than any monetary donation, more so than I'd love for people to put signs up, but that's not for everybody. If you can't do that, or if you want to help in some way, write a post, write an email out to your friends in Faribault, write a letter to the editor, because it's those personal accounts that build trust. And if someone trusts your word, or if your trust rings true, then that's a way to start building trust, even if my messaging hasn't reached them. It might reach them in another way. And again, I'm trying to conduct this campaign the way that I intend to conduct myself as commissioner, by putting in the effort, building this consistency, so then okay, within reason, I'm going to be able to catch a live stream. Within reason, I'm going to know that there's going to be an event that I can see Sam at, whether it's one that he's organized or he's just attending, and I can talk to him. I'm putting in that effort so that it can be not only available, but trusted and reliable. And I think I've been doing that. And so that makes me really confident that if that's what I can do when I'm not elected, and it's not one of my jobs, that those efforts will only expand when I am elected and when I am working in that job. We've got a question here in the chat. Thank you, Tracy, for sharing it. She wants me to talk about some generational issues. Do you see things differently than the current direction? She'd be interested in hearing some generational observations. How can county government continue to be relevant for the next 20 to 30 years? That's a great question. This might be news to some people. I am 21 years old, and that's a lot younger than a lot of people who generally run for office locally. And so I understand that. I don't think I've spoken too much about specifically my age or generational things, but talking about long-term goals, just what I was kind of what I started this live stream on, was looking at things from the big picture, looking at things in the long term. So 20 to 30 years down the road, those are the investments that I want to see. Oftentimes, if you're voting on a comprehensive plan, or you're voting on long-term visions, there's a good chance that a lot of people voting on that either will be retired, moved away, or beyond their human lifespan by the time any of those things might come to fruition. But I'll be 39 when Vision 2040 will either be complete or be extended. And I think we need that perspective as well, where yes, we're being lofty and ambitious, and we want to have those aspirational ideas, but we also need to be serious about executing it. It might take a little longer, it might be less pragmatic to really get in the weeds and talk about what the long-term implications are for a lot of the decisions that we make. But I plan to live in Faribault for a long time. I'll be seeing the repercussions of every vote of the Rice County Board of Commissioners when I am 50 and 60 and 70, and I might be pushing my luck then. But I'll be seeing the positive and negative reactions of every vote that I take for a long, long time. So when we talk about deferred maintenance, when we talk about passing the buck to future generations to solve issues, to preserve history, to fix systemic problems, that's not lofty for me. That's not. I get a little frustrated with that, right? I get a little frustrated, and it even gets to the point sometimes where very well-meaning people say, it's going to be up to future generations, or, oh, I have so much hope for future generations to do better than we've been doing, or, we've screwed it up so much, I can't wait for you guys to get involved. Well, we're here. We're ready to do it because we can't afford to wait to get to be 50 or 60 years old to get into office to fix the things. We need to be ready to take action now. We need to be ready to take leadership now. And my goal with this campaign is to get not just more young people, but more people in general who aren't currently represented in local government to feel like not only can they run for office, they can volunteer, they can make a difference, they can serve on commissions, they can get involved in nonprofits, they can be part of grassroots organizing efforts, they can be part of the solution. Because right now, we talk about getting younger people involved. Younger people aren't just 21-year-olds when it comes to comparing to people who generally run for office. Younger people than the people who generally run for office is under the age of 50. That is younger. Under the age of 40 is younger. And so fewer and fewer people who are going to be dealing with the consequences and the repercussions of our votes. We don't see our interests necessarily represented. And that's not to say that interests don't align with other community members. That's not to say that I don't agree with someone just because they are 70 or just because they are 50 or just because they're 90. In fact, I see a lot of common ground with myself and a lot of people those age. One of my favorite things, one of my favorite places to be is the Rice County Historical Society. And their membership, their volunteer base is not closer to my age bracket. But I love being there and listening and being part of it, and my jokes go over well because I have a very antiquated sense of humor. All of these things aren't to say that people older than me bad, only young people are good. It's simply to say that people who are in my age bracket are voters. We are community members. We are taxpayers. And will be here for a long, long time. And that is what I think needs to be represented in our decisions. Thinking about the big picture. Being ambitious but also realistic about the long term. Because in order for there to be ambition, for there to be lofty goals, in order to even start having conversation about how can we make these big things happen, someone has to say it. Someone has to push for it. Someone has to lobby for it. It might take a while for those things to come to fruition. It might take a while for those things to be realistic. But those things need to be represented. And that's what I am striving to do. I said that I was going to talk about historic buildings and demolitions today, and I am going to do that now. So tonight we had a meeting of the Faribault Heritage Preservation Commission. I'm very proud to be a member of that commission. It can be disheartening when there are things outside of our control. And one of those issues are the downtown block that is owned by the county government. I've talked about this in a previous post, a previous video, but there's a block of historic buildings downtown across the street from the courthouse building, and the county commissioners voted today to demolish the buildings that they own on that block. And in fact, they actually approved a bid for demolition. I'm trying to think if I have anything new to say that I haven't already said about this topic. It is extremely disheartening, knowing not only what the full process has been to how we got here, but that it feels like there's been such little choice in the matter. There's been such little discussion and options, and certainly not, in my view, an effort to get as much community input as possible. Part of what the frustrating thing is, there isn't a plan for the space. There is no plan for what will be there afterwards. It also kind of casts a bit of a cloud on potential prospects for votes that I would need to take as commissioner. I was really hoping that I would have some kind of last-ditch opportunity to object, some sort of last-ditch opportunity to rally the troops, to advocate for these buildings. Instead, we'll be continuing the work of cleaning up after the mess, of dealing with the repercussions. And this isn't just recent. This isn't just what's been happening in the last few years. This has been going on. The county's owned these buildings for essentially my entire life. And still it's been demolition by neglect. And the decision seemed to be made back then that these buildings weren't going to be kept up, that these buildings weren't going to be used, and that they weren't going to be put up for sale. And yet they were allowed to remain empty. They were allowed to remain decaying. They weren't put up for sale. They weren't made available for other use. Not that every building there needed to be used for housing, but we've had a lot of economic concerns over the last 20 years. How would some of those buildings have maybe contributed to that? We have an extreme housing shortage. How could some of those buildings have contributed to that? Not just to our history, but to our actual economics and our growth as a community. It feels negligent to have choked out those buildings without even so much as a plan as to what's going to be there. So that's extremely frustrating. The HPC today was discussing again the repercussions, the cleanup, the what can we do to preserve the history of a building that has been lost. And I just don't understand how, as a public entity, you have chosen that path for yourself, and no one thought or no one advocated to steer us off that path. So that has been extremely frustrating. I wish I had an opportunity to vote to put those buildings at least up for sale. But that is coming down the pike. We'll be talking about that more, I have no doubt. My goal as commissioner would be to save as many historic buildings as possible, to look at new ways to fund proper maintenance, to fund proper preservation efforts. How do we tell those stories so that there's sufficient community interest and buy-in for things like preservation? This is work that I've been doing for a while now, and that's what would need to be continued, and sort of the idea of public history being a center point of how we talk about historic buildings. That's vital, but it's hard to not be disheartened by the onslaught of historic buildings coming down. And that's why we need proactive approaches to ordinance enforcement. That's why we need proactive approaches to making sure that things are up to code and safe and not causing any long-term issues. Again, talking about the big picture, that's what deferred maintenance is, right? Deferred maintenance, in most cases, is not, oh, we will fix that later. Deferred maintenance just means we'll just wait to demolish it until that's the only thing left to do. We'll wait to do something interesting with the building until it's the only thing left to do. So that has been very disheartening. One question that I've gotten quite a bit is regarding my experience. We're talking about generational things. We're talking about my age, and I understand that people would have pause about my age. And I understand that's going to be an issue for some people. And if there's nothing that I can do to get you to vote for a 21-year-old, there's nothing I can do about that. But if your concern is experience, I hope you have an open mind. For as long as I've been able, I have been serving the Faribault community, and specifically trying to make change in local government and represent my views, my values, advocate for working people in local government. I've been volunteering in my community for as long as I have been able. I have been active volunteer at the Paradise Center for the Arts for the past 11 years. I've volunteered at Riverbend Nature Center as a Minnesota Master Naturalist volunteer. Right out of high school, I was an AmeriCorps Vista member at the Faribault Diversity Coalition, specifically trying to create more employment opportunities in the community. In that time, I also have been gaining experience and knowledge of local government with my work through the city of Northfield, managing their public television station. I have a small business in town, so I've had to navigate those systems, manage budgets there. Since 2020, I have been both a planning commissioner for the city of Faribault and a heritage preservation commissioner for the city of Faribault. So if anyone has had, whether it's an apartment project or their neighbor wants a bigger garage than they currently have, or anything along those lines that would be a zoning or an ordinance issue or a conditional use permit, that's come before the Planning Commission. And I've more than likely been part of that process. So we've had a lot of big conversations about comp plans, about zoning, about what is the long-term vision for the community. Not only the big picture stuff, but Planning Commission also gets into the details. It also gets into buffers. It also gets into setbacks. And where do we decide to draw the line for conditional use? Why do we do it for this project versus that project? Talking about the long-term implications and setting precedent in our votes, making sure that we're consistent as a commission, while also getting into the nitty-gritty, talking about the everyday, talking about the immediacy of those circumstances. And I really, really enjoyed that. And with Historic Preservation Commission, we've both needed to talk about the itty-bitty details, whether it's this kind of beveled corner or this kind of color of sign, but also how can we be an effective government body? Sometimes groups like the HPC get a bad rap because they seem like they're just, being real sticklers. They just want to really bother a business owner about, what kind of sign they can have on their door. But that's not the reputation that we want, but that's what's currently in city code. That's currently what the policy is with the HPC. So we've actually started attempting to institute policy changes that can make it easier for business owners and applicants to make their way through the HPC approval process, or even streamline it to say, if you meet the code and staff says you get it, then it's deemed you can go straight ahead. It's only if you need a variance on that you come to the HPC. So we've been working on reforms like that to focus our effort, making sure that we are building those positive relationships with the community, trying to make it easier where we can make it easier for folks. So then when we do need to become sticklers, so then when we do need to advocate for specific things, we've already built that relationship of trust with the community. And they'll know that we aren't just making a stink because it's come before us and that's what we do. We're trying to make ourselves the most effective body possible for our mission of historic preservation and education. And that has been a real learning experience too. In my personal life, a lot of folks know me from making documentaries, from producing things for Faribault Community Television. In the last year, I purchased a house out by Teepee Tonka. I get a beautiful view of the viaduct, and I love this community. That's, I think, one of the most defining things about me, is my love for Faribault, how intrinsic my identity, my worldview is to this community. I think it's inseparable from how I view myself and how I view the world. And maybe even that is a qualification, right? I think that's I care about my community not just because it is my community and it's where I happen to be living, but specifically because of the stories that it holds, because of the makeup of our community story. It resonates with me. It's been instrumental in shaping who I am. And therefore I feel like because Faribault has been so important to making me who I am and has set me on the course for my future, I feel I owe it to Faribault to be a positive force of change in shaping its future. And I hope to have the opportunity to do that as commissioner. If you have questions at any time, you can both pop in the chat, go to my website. My website has information, more of my regular writings that you can find there, where I talk about specific issues. I talk about areas in history that have inspired and informed me. Keep you updated on some of my other projects in the community. And you can also see upcoming events. I am hosting events on various topics. I'm just going to make sure I'm not receiving any messages here. But the big thing that I hope you can take away from this is that I am committed to not only running a good race, but trying to make a net positive. If this is the only, if the election doesn't go my way, I don't want to look back on the campaign as wasted time or wasted effort. Therefore, I want to make it as positive and constructive as possible, so that even if it doesn't achieve the principal goal of getting me elected, it achieves a goal of keeping people informed, making people aware of something that maybe they weren't aware of before. Maybe we can achieve getting more folks engaged in the process, aware of different tools for making change. Maybe we can make people aware of specific issues, or that they're not alone in challenges that they've faced related to housing issues, related to veterans benefits, related to any of the areas that we want to make change, that I want to hear from you. That will be worth it. That will be a positive good. If we can even just be one small part of changing what our expectations for elected leaders are, whether it's in outreach, transparency, or priorities. If this campaign can accomplish just a little bit of that, if we can accomplish changing that conversation and being a net positive in the narrative of Faribault, I'll be proud of the campaign. But I know we can get elected. I've been building trust in the community since I was younger than I am now. And I think that trust means something. I think people have watched me do good work on behalf of Faribault simply for the sake of doing good work on behalf of Faribault. And I like to think that people have noticed and that they'll factor that in when they vote. Elections can be unpredictable, they can be tricky, they can be confusing. But I don't want any of that to distract from how vital they are. Elections, when folks are engaged, when folks are aware of the issues, when folks feel that their vote is valued and will make a difference, elections in those circumstances can be profound statements of vision. They can be profound statements of faith in an idea, not just of whatever the candidate might be talking about or what those individual relationships might be with a candidate, but elections can also be a profound statement of faith in democracy, a profound statement of trust in a communal statement of this is who we are and these are the values that we hold. Really, regardless of who you vote for, what the tallies are going to be, the more people we have voting, the more people we have casting a ballot in an election, that's a profound statement of we care about our community. That's a profound statement of we give a crap. And that would be really neat. Because part of what I've been fighting for and advocating for since I was 14 years old was to get people to give a crap about Faribault. That's not the greatest campaign slogan, but it's just kind of what I'm feeling right now. I'm going to hop in just to make sure I'm not getting any comments that I'm missing, any messages that I'm missing. I'll check the Concerned Citizens page to see if there's anything there. I'll get there. But once again, I hope if anyone has any questions, they can get those to me. If you have any specific issues that you want me to address, I hope you'll let me know. If you want to see anything, you can follow the link, samtemplecommissioner.com, and this is what that looks like. You can see some of my core values. You can see my writings in the platform section, organizing events, all those things that I'm having in the parks for the next 2 months. I hope you'll come and check all or some of those out. And at this point, I hope you spread the word. You have friends in town, ask them who they're voting for. Ask them if they know that there's a race for Rice County Commissioner. If you support me, I hope you'll tell them why. If I have your trust, I hope you'll implore them to have the same trust. And if they don't, they can reach out and I'll see what I can do. Together, I know that we can make this an effective campaign. I know I've already found the entire thing extremely fulfilling because I love my community. I love Faribault. And just having the opportunity to talk to people about something I love is, who doesn't enjoy that? I hope you'll get involved. I hope you'll come visit me at some of my events. I'd love to talk to you about any subject. There's a couple upcoming events that I've been invited to, put on by a couple different organizations. I'll make sure to let everyone on Facebook, on Instagram, know at which events I'll be attending, so that if they have specific questions for me, they can come out and ask them. I hope you implore people to be informed voters. I hope you implore people to really understand where candidates stand on different issues when they vote. Um, and I know that that's not easy, and I know politics aren't for everyone, but democracy should be. I hope you all have a good night. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching after the fact. I'll see you again soon. Thanks. All right, not quite done. I got one last comment under the wire. I'm here. Jonathan Wood, thank you for your comment. You have a question 2 minutes ago, right as I was giving my big emotional wrap up at the end. I should have vamped a minute longer. Jonathan Wood asks, Mr. Samuel Temple, thanks for your time. As a council member, we are nearing our city's budget cycle. As a future commissioner, how do you plan to keep tax levies low? Median income in Faribault is around $34,000. We need to keep these low. I absolutely understand, and I think cost of living is one of the biggest challenges that our community faces and that a lot of communities face. But Faribault is in a very particular situation, right? Whether it's the kind of work that we have here, it tends to be blue collar work, and those tend to be some of them can be lower paying jobs on average. But part of it is also the systems that we have in place right now, whether it's things that are income, whether it's social services or housing things, any kind of assistance programs, when they're income based, they tend to incentivize people rather than helping them gain upward mobility. Sometimes they can do that. But in other instances, they almost incentivize people to stay just below that threshold. They incentivize people to stay in that area. And when we talk about property taxes, part of our property taxes go toward funding programs like that. So what I would like to do is to make as many of those programs as we reasonably can. Obviously, we can't do it all at once, but I'd like to move toward a system where as many programs like that are opened up to more people, are opened up to a broader range of incomes. Because it doesn't matter how much you make, you need stable housing. It doesn't matter how much you make, you need food, and you need nutritious food. It doesn't matter how much you make, you need to be healthy, and you need those things to be stable. I've talked about this in previous live streams, but there are three basic things that every human being needs to not only survive, but if we expect them to thrive, we need those things. So what I would propose to do, we want to improve upward mobility. We want to improve opportunities so that there isn't so much as a burden on them when tax time does come around. We want to make as many of those programs as possible, if not universal, accessible to a wider range of people. So then not only do they have support when they need it, and we're incentivizing them to move up, but it's also an investment on their part. Then suddenly the taxes that they give aren't just abstract ideas for the good of the community, but it's also an investment. I am helping to fund these programs so that if I need it, it's there. It's an insurance policy, right? That's one way. The other way is moving away from how the property tax system works, right? I think a lot of people agree that funding schools based on property taxes doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't make a very fair system. A lot of the things that we do don't necessarily make sense to be used on property tax. And I know that the city is considering a sales tax. They've looked at other funding options. Do we need to make the process easier for approving things like that? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But I think what we can agree on, and what, if I'm elected, Councillor Wood, I could do alongside you, is advocate for things at the state level, advocate for things at the federal level, because we want to see these big reforms. I want to see reform in, for example, how we fund schools. How can we take the burden of that off of property taxes and make it a more fair system across the entire state of Minnesota? We don't vote on school board issues as a commissioner or a council member, but we are elected by the people of Faribault. We can represent and speak on behalf of the people of Faribault. We can go to the Capitol and lobby for those things. We can request meetings with the governor, with the lieutenant governor, and try to make those things happen. And we can show that we are doing everything in our power to ease the burden on local taxes, and specifically on property taxes, to try and make those things happen. But we also need to be responsible with our spending, and we need to do common sense things with our spending. I am all about efficiency and always striving to do things in a better way. Right now, I think we need to bring the perspective of it's okay to need to do things better, right? It's okay to admit that things could have been done better. Right now, I worry that there isn't necessarily that perspective at a lot of levels of government. If you're so caught up in insisting that you couldn't have possibly done anything wrong, you're never going to learn or accept that you might be able to do things better. So that's also what we want to do, right? Is make sure that we are expecting the most efficiency possible from our county government, from our city government, and trying to streamline things whenever we can. I talked earlier in this live stream about the Heritage Preservation Commission and how we're trying to be more effective with our time, more effective with our relationships. How can we reimagine what we do to be as effective as possible? Social services is another example. If you open things up to more people, if you open more services up to more people, not only, again, do we get the benefits we've talked about before, but you also cut down on administrative costs. You'd be surprised, or maybe not surprised, by how much we spend, how much budget is allocated for determining how much money someone makes, to see if they make little enough to receive this benefit. Whereas if we raise the ceiling even just a little bit, we would save on administrative costs while getting more services to people, and making that an investment for the taxes that they've paid. But there's also there are a lot of things that local governments can do to lower the cost of living, and therefore lower the burden of taxation. The big thing is just insisting that there's always a way to improve, there's always a way to do things better, and using the bully pulpit, using the position that we would be elected to hold effectively and to its fullest in terms of advocacy at every level of government. We need to ensure that there are not only a good number of jobs. We have a good number of jobs here in Faribault. We need to make sure that they are good paying, stable jobs with benefits. We need to make sure that people have stable housing and food and health care and child care, because those are the things necessary for people to move up, to have stability in their lives, to ease financial burdens. So if we want to lower the cost of living and lower uncertainty in people's lives, we need to prioritize stability. That's why one of my pillars in this campaign is stability for the working class. because I genuinely believe that that is that is one of the most important things that we can do to not only improve things for our for the tax base, and not only improve things for taxpayers, but it also is good for people. It's good for the community members that we serve to have stability in their lives. Stability increases upward mobility. Stability decreases addiction and emergency service usage. Stability decreases crime. Stability increases property values. It increases productivity in the workplace. It improves people's interpersonal relationships. It might not sound like much, but even just looking at every vote, framing it as, how is this creating more stability for everyday people in Faribault? And if we're struggling to answer that question, maybe we need to prioritize that. Maybe we need to be talking about a different issue. Tried to get a mix of high concept things in there and specific things in there. But we need to be responsible with the taxpayer dollars. And people should not have to scratch their heads and look at a budget spreadsheet in order to understand, well, I'm paying this much in county taxes. I'm paying this much in city taxes. What am I getting for that? That's, again, where we need that outreach, where we need that transparency. But we also need to be making decisions so that it's an easy answer. Here's what you're getting for it. Here's what this benefit is. Whether it's you pay this much in taxes and it increases your property value this much, or here's how much you get in taxes, and here are the services available to you. That's the thing about kind of ideologies. That's the thing about transparency, stability, respect, outreach, and all of these things. They all fit together. And for me, it's kind of hard to have one plank without the other. You know, they're called pillars for a reason. You need them all to stand up and stay up straight. That was a great question. I went back and forth because it came in just as soon as I transitioned out to the end card, but clearly I had something to say about it and I wanted to get back in to do it. So if you have any follow-ups, Councilor Wood, I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, if anyone else has anything, I guess I'm still on here. So if you have anything, I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, I'll be wrapping up in a little bit. I can come up with some fluff maybe if that's what people want me to answer. I have 2 pets. I have a bearded dragon named Cornelia. She is about 3 years old now, and I have a 5-year-old rescue cat named Honeysuckle Augustus. I believe he's made appearances in the live stream before. Those are the 2 pets that I have. My favorite professional sports team are the Minnesota Twins, which is a little unfortunate. Right now I'm reading a mystery book by A.A. Milne. It's very good. I enjoy it a lot. I'm watching Andor, the new Star Wars series on Disney Plus, also very good. That's the interpersonal stuff, right? Like that's likability. I had those answers focus group tested. I think we're about done here. I don't think I'm getting any follow-up questions about any of that, but if anyone has any other thoughts or anything else, don't hesitate to reach out at any time. I have an event coming up, not this weekend, but the following weekend. So I hope to see you there, hope to see you involved, and if you have any questions for me, let me know. If you want to support me, I hope you consider writing a personal Facebook post. I hope you consider writing a letter to the editor and telling your friends to make sure they vote, and make sure they vote for the candidate of your choice. Have a good night, everybody. What a neat little epilogue we had there, but you know, I love a compelling narrative, and we had a twist at the end there. So Have a good night.